Hey everyone, been a while since my last upload. If you're curious what I've been up to, here's my playtime since Dune Awakening released like about a week ago, which combined with my pre-release time puts me at an unreasonable number of hours, but there is a reason. I've just really enjoyed this game. It's not without its faults, that's for sure, and the more that I've played, the more areas for improvement I've seen, which we'll cover today. But bottom line is that at its core, this has hands down been a fantastic experience for me. As a fan of survival games, it is up there with the likes of Valheim and Shrouded and V Rising as one of my favorites in the genre. I just think they've built a nice foundation. I've certainly gotten my money's worth thus far, and I'm excited to see where they take the game in the future. Hopefully we've got plenty of updates with new content, maps, modes, and just more of the game to experience, along with improvements to some of the areas in which I think the game is lacking. But as for what is currently here right now, well, I've got some like 350 hours sunk into the game that says, yes, overall, I have enjoyed it. So, all right, let's get into the review. First up, I want to go ahead and talk you through my experience with the game over this past, well, I don't know, it's been 10 days or something. Time is like just a warp, a mess of conglomerate of I don't know what's going on. Launch day went surprisingly well, actually. I had a few server hiccups on a couple of occasions with a little bit of rubber banding, but nothing that lasted too long or was bad enough to ruin the experience. It was actually mostly smooth. Like, I didn't have any disconnects or long queue times to deal with, so in that regard, yeah, I would say launch went well. The biggest server issue was, for whatever reason, while doing the trials, those solo instance caves that the main story quest revolves around, performance got terrible in there all of a sudden, which again was really strange because these are solo instances. Ooh, we are getting framey. We are getting very framey. Yikes, this instance is super framey, and what's weird is I would have assumed if it was framey anywhere, it would have been framey in the open world. I don't know why this got framey all of a sudden. Maybe this instance is shared across all other people also doing this quest? And like it's overload. I don't know, really strange. This wasn't a huge deal though. Trials last like a couple of minutes tops, but it definitely was worth noting. Other than that though, on the first day, I just enjoyed playing through the opening hours yet again. Made my way fairly quickly through the initial zone of Haga Basin South, as I had already played through this content quite a few times prior to release. And then after about an hour, I crossed over into Vermilius Gap, setting up my initial base of operations, which was north of the Anvil Trading Post. It's a nice spot as it lets you easily transition from the Iron Tier into the Steel Tier, as this area is nestled right in between two zones that provide both of those resources. So I did a few farming loops around Western East Vermilius Gap, progressing the main story quest, unlocking my third skill slot and the Spice Ultimate in the process. I picked up some unique schematics, cleared many enemy camps and strongholds, as well as caves for the resources and the intel that comes from the strongholds. And then after a couple of those runs, I was fully decked out with unique iron weapons, armor, and tools, and it was then time to move towards the Rift. And at this point, I really pumped the brakes, slowing down my progress to just enjoy the adventure from here on forward. The Rift, in my opinion, is where the game really begins to open up in a few different capacities. For one, it's got much more varied and interesting terrain, the centerpiece of which being the massive rift itself that extends far into the planet's surface and across several zones. All throughout the Rift, it's dotted with many strongholds, mining facilities, and outposts, some of which even span the entire depth of the Rift, which is just really cool. It's a cool place to explore. In general, the zones surrounding the Rift also include far more interesting and expansive enemy-filled points of interest, and those enemies also present a more difficult challenge with harder hitting weapons, more weapon variety, and many more shielded variants to take on. And it was upon reaching this section of the Haga Basin that I really just dove in and immersed myself in the game, going through those, clearing those different points of interest, doing the main and side story missions, leveling and gearing up my character, and bumping into some other players on my server. Now, after about a day or two of that, it was then time to start climbing the crafting progression ladder yet again. So I made myself a mining buggy and headed out to gather the resources necessary to make my first ornithopter. So this takes a ton of aluminum, which is found high atop the cliffs of the shield wall area, along with cobalt paste, which requires some farming of these bright crystals deep inside the rift. So my expedition to acquire these things took multiple hours, and it was not without its challenges, but eventually I farmed farmed, processed, and crafted the parts to make my ornithopter after about 14 total hours of playtime. Now keep in mind, most players are going to take like 20 to 30, maybe even 40 hours before reaching this point, but I had previously played the game for over 200 hours, so I had a lot of pre-existing knowledge speeding up that process, and I didn't even rush it as fast as one could because I just wanted to enjoy and not speed towards the end game too much, which, as we'll get into, was a smart decision. So the next day, with my ornithopter in hand, I was ready to venture out to the shield wall area, the zones that are to the north and west corners of Haga Basin. Now here things are kicked up a notch once more, with more expansive points of interest, another harder tier of enemies wielding even more varied weaponry, and of course the next tier of crafting progression. I went through the process of moving house, taking everything from my initial starting base by the anvil and transferring it into my new home in the hills north of the Crossroads trade post. This once again is another centralized location for crafting mats that you need, this time in the duraluminum tier. This spot actually remains my current main base as of today, with easy access to any and all tier 5 resources, along with a short trip to the deep desert where the endgame tier 6 resides, although I've basically decided not to bother for reasons we'll get into. So the remaining 50 to 60-ish hours of my playtime, what's been going on then? Well, I basically spent that time going around doing and seeing pretty much everything there is to do and see. I thoroughly farmed up tier 5 duraluminum with a full set and backup sets of all the armor, weapons, and tools. I went through and cleared every stronghold point of interest, those main bases that reward intel points in every zone. I cleared all of those out, getting way more research points than I'll likely ever need to use, at least for this launch version of the game. I think I'm still sitting at around 2,000. I progressed through all of the Atreides faction quest lines, maxing out my ranking with them. I have done all but one, I think, of the contracts from the various trading posts in the games. I cleared the main story quest along with many of the side quests that are aimed at guiding you through the crafting systems, all of those journey quests. I also finished 2 of the 4 advanced class quest lines. I probably won't bother with the remaining 2 as I currently have no need for them. And then I spent like a good 15 to 20 hours progressing through the deep desert, doing a few things here. Firstly, I spent time repeatedly farming the points of interest in the A row, going from west to east, hitting every shipwreck and testing station along the path, gathering many copies of the unique duraluminum schematics that they reward. I also began even solo farming the much more difficult testing stations found in the D row and beyond. Now these were reportedly requiring a group to clear, but as it turns out, the melee and shield focus builds are cracked in PvE, and with some careful management, I was able to actually quite easily take these on myself, getting clear times of around 25 minutes solo. The reward for these are unique gear schematics for the 6th and final tier of items in the game, but honestly, I don't have much need for them. In fact, for reasons we'll get into shortly, I don't really enjoy the deep desert, so I think I'm good where I'm at, and that's basically the current position. Now I sit here with over 100 hours played since the game released, over 350 hours all told if you add my pre-release time playing in the previews and closed beta tests that went on, and I'm good. Like, I've had my fun, a lot of it in fact, and overall I am quite happy with my time spent with Dune Awakening. But there are certainly some issues and things that I would like to discuss. Speaking of which, it is now time to move on to the pros and the cons. So let's start off with the things that I like. All right, first up is the world immersion and design. It is S+ tier. I just think they've created an amazing play space. I have adored spending time in this game world. In particular, Haga Basin, with everything from the Vermilius Gap onward, just added a lot of interesting visual and location variety. Like, even with the constraints of being set on a desert planet, I think they did a good job of making it look and feel varied. That combined with their regularly occurring events that they have, including the sandworm, the crashing ships, the Sardaukar patrols, and the dust storms, each of these things on many occasions created some very cinematic feeling moments while playing the game. Like, to just be walking along and then interrupted by the loud concussive bang of ships blasted in the atmosphere before crash landing beside you, or seeing the searching spotlights of the patrol ships narrowly pass you by, or the dust storm rolling in from the horizon before completely engulfing you. It's in sector, which means it's here. You can see it actually, it's rolling up above. I think I can take shelter in here until it passes. Does this count as shelter? It does. Perfect, okay. I'll show you though when it comes through because it's cool as shit. It's one of my favorite parts of the game. The sandstorms literally roll in and you get like a huge gust like that as it sweeps over you. It's really, really cool. What does it do functionally to the gameplay? Will it damage you? You will die if you stay out there, yeah. You take damage over time and it ticks pretty quickly. And then of course the sandworm emerging from the dunes as you speed your way to the nearest rock formation. There is the worm. So what happens is first the worm, you make noise, first the worm emerges, then it submerges, and after a few seconds it appears and chases you. And if it catches up to you during that chase, it just goes straight, it like beelines it to you with its mouth wide open. If it catches you, you're dead. Yeah, literally just called it, look at that. It's all right though, we're on safe ground. All of this is cool as hell and just adds an extra layer to the immersion and again those cinematic moments that happen within the game. And I don't even have much interest in Dune personally, but as a world and a play space, it's been very immersive and enjoyable exploring Funcom's take on it, so absolutely well done there. Next up is the camp clearing. Now I will admit that the combat system has plenty of flaws, I can't deny that. I've pointed out many of them prior to release myself, but that said, I still enjoy engaging with the combat system, particularly while in the process of clearing enemy camps. I think that once you have all of the tools at your disposal, with the movement, the multiple abilities, and a variety of ranged and melee weapons, there is a fun gameplay loop in there, even if the individual components do in fact lack any visceral, impactful feel. I think it's just the sum of the parts result in a combat loop that I have had fun partaking in. I have to remember, I started out this session I was literally just wanting to build my weapon. This is the thing with this game, is like, you could have one plan and then get distracted by something, and then 2 hours later, you still haven't done what you planned on doing. Like, I was just farming the desert for schematics, and then all of a sudden I'm in this whole thing of like dealing with wind turbines and what the bullshit. I liked going around clearing POIs in the game. It's that simple. I've hit nearly every one, barring some of the tiny camps and a few caves here and there. Speaking of which, I do appreciate some of the variety that they brought in the points of interest. The starting zones are the most generic for sure, with the enemy camps and outposts looking nearly identical from one to the next. But as you move in and beyond the gap, they start to get a lot more distinct and much larger as well. Some locations really vary things up, especially in and around the rift and the shield wall regions. And once you get to the northwest zones, they start adding these really cool temples and places of worship. Just some really neat looking places that I enjoyed, again, going in and clearing enemies that resided within. I've mentioned this before, but I will say it yet again. The movement in this game, it starts out at like an F tier, but then goes up to like an S tier. It's just way more enjoyable once you get your suspensor belt combined with any of the movement skills, be that the Shigawara cable, Bene Gesserit sprint, or the Trooper knee charge. It is super entertaining launching yourself across, up, and over the game's terrain, with the belts accounting for and carrying your speed and momentum. You can do some hilariously broken looking moves, to the point where I had some dude asking me if I was cheating, if I was hacking while I was playing the game, because everything just looked that ridiculous. Once you get the suspensor belt, plus literally any movement skill that gives you momentum, it goes from F tier to S tier. Like the worst feeling movement system to like one of the best. Like, I just love this. You zip around, and the more momentum you get from whatever ability you use, the faster you go. It can get like cartoonishly fast, especially with the Bindu sprint, the Bene Gesserit sprint. It becomes we're warframing. Yes, exactly. It just gets out of hand. And I can do this for a long time now at tier 2. It gets even better tier 3, and then that momentum you carry when you sprint, and you're just like, what's happening? What am I doing? Someone came into the stream yesterday when I was doing this, and they said I was hacking. They said, oh, I see you're using hacks. It's because all people see is they see some guy going through the desert, getting stuck in quicksand, and then pulling out his miner and mining something for 40 seconds, and they're like, wow, this game is slow and boring. And yes, parts of the game are slow and boring, but parts of the game are you're also Superman. And I was like, no, I'm not hacking, dude. I'm just playing the game. He's like, oh, so you're exploiting a glitch? I'm like, no, dude. I'm just using 2 abilities in the game. That's all I'm doing. I'm combining the existence of suspensor belt with the movement skills that have momentum, It's not my fault. Also, the progression. Up until the very end game, the final tier, I actually find progression through this game and the grind just about right. It isn't too hard to get up and running, crafting things on your own. In fact, I pretty much played this entire thing solo, and I progressed all the way up to the final tier without having to spend a lot of time grinding for resources. I think so long as you upgrade your gathering tools, be that the hand miner, the vehicle miner, the blood extractors, and compactors, it's pretty easy to be swimming in the resources you need. Your biggest bottleneck through the mid game and even into the late game is water, which can be more easily solved via the death stills. So if you're playing and you've not got those up and running, do so as soon as possible. Do you think the clan guild group will be required, or can you do this solo? Like I've been telling people, I've been doing this entirely solo. Like everything I've done so far. I'm actually gonna be grouping up pretty much for the first time today with my friends to check out some of the end game and maybe get into some group PvP. But all my progression, getting to where I'm at, getting my ornithopter, all my farming, my questing, my base building, it's all just been me. Now that said, this all changes quite dramatically come the end game in the deep desert, where the stuff you need is very heavy and a long flight away. But honestly, you don't really need that gear other than to say you got it. Like, unless you are super interested in the game's PvP, which as of this moment is ornithopters fighting other ornithopters in the sky, nothing in tier 6 is, in my opinion, worth the grind to get it. You don't need it for any part of Haga Basin. You don't even need it for the southern border of the deep desert. You only really need the tier 6 stuff, which is in the tier 6 zone, if you want to fight ornithopters in the sky and you want the tier 6 variants of said ornithopters. But that's it. All the other content in the game, you don't need the crazy grind for, and it's actually basically the point at which I've decided to stop playing. Something else that I really like here is they do have some nice quality of life in the survival game genre. For starters, they always auto pull from storage when you're crafting items, so you don't need to run back and forth to and from the chest to get the items every time you want to craft something new. Everything is always automatically pulled from them, even from the very beginning, the very starter chest. It's done by default. Also, quest rewards can be picked up prior to acquiring the quests themselves. In fact, many times I will go to a town and pick up contracts that I already have the item for. Quest items are always located in like specific briefcases or chests in certain areas. So, but you don't have to know where they all are, but if you come across a briefcase that you can loot and it has a contract item in it, you don't have to have previously picked up the contract and you'll still be able to turn it in like I just did. So I just turned in like 10 quests and got a bunch of extra XP, and see, I got 4 more skill points now, just like that. And then lastly, in the positives, I just want to say that I feel personally that this has been like an A+ survival game experience. As a game in the survival genre, like I consider the initial release version of this A+ in terms of the amount of fun it's delivered. Like I actually can't think of another survival game, even those that are amongst my favorites, that I was this obsessed with and playing for so many hours on my very first go around. Be it Valheim or Enshrouded or V Rising, as great as those games are, none of them hooked me as deeply or for as long as Dune has. So I mean, man, if they could take this baseline and keep it up with future updates, definitely a game that I'm excited to give another playthrough once there's more to experience. Or even just a fresh start server with my friends, maybe trying a full PvP Haga Basin private server. I've played through a lot of this game. I have 350 hours, 250 prior to release, over 100 now post-release. I have had a blast, barring the complaints that we're about to get to. And yeah, like I will be playing more of this game in the future. So, but as a baseline, as a survival game, I'm really impressed. I've really, really liked it. Would you say this is a good intro for someone who's never played a survival crafting game? I mean, literally just any survival crafting game is a good intro to the genre. It'll tell you if you like these kind of games or not. But I would definitely say this is a good one, a very enjoyable one of the survival crafting games that I've played. I think the main testament is just how much I've played this in such a short amount of time. That speaks to how much I've enjoyed it. Like, it's been thoroughly entertaining. I mean, it's certainly less janky than Conan Exiles was when that came out. And honestly, I was talking with my friends about this the other day. I know it's getting dumped on for a lot of good reasons. Like, there's a lot of things that should be better, but it is still at the same time one of the most polished of the genre that I've played. Still acknowledging all of its bugs, because it does have some jankiness and some issues. But in this genre, where some of the best games have plenty of that in this genre, it's pretty high up there with the polish that it has at release, like compared to what I've been used to. Like, this is no more or less janky than like Valheimer and Shrouded was, like in terms of how the combat feels and things like that. You know what I mean? Maybe I've had some more bugs than I did in those games. I think that might be an accurate statement to say, but I'm like, it doesn't like ruin the whole experience for me. I understand we'd prefer to not have bugs, but like it doesn't actually like all of a sudden, I don't go from like having fun playing, hey, I'm having a good time, and then I come across a bug and I'm like, delete this shit. This developer needs to shut down immediately. Now, if the bugs are persistent enough and annoying enough, then that can bring the whole experience down. But coming across an occasional bug, honestly, it can almost be funny if nothing else. All right, now let's talk about the cons, things that I think need some work still and are to be improved. Combat. While I do have a fun time in the game fighting enemies and clearing those points of interest like I mentioned, the fact remains that the combat does leave much to be desired in the visceral feel and impactfulness department. Even switching to a melee build with a new melee-focused abilities and active and passive skills, it doesn't change the fact that when you swing a sword, when you lunge with a rapier or stab with a dagger, it all feels pretty weightless. The attack itself, the way the enemies respond, the associated sound effects with it just feels like you're swinging at air or stabbing through a piece of paper. Now, as discussed in the past, this isn't uncommon in the survival genre, but nevertheless, it is something that I would love to see improved. All that said, the melee combat, it is what it is. It'd be cool if it felt better. It doesn't. It's a pretty floaty kind of feel, but it's all right. I think the shooting feels good enough. I think the movement feels phenomenal. I think the flying feels phenomenal. I could actually fly this ornithopter around all day. I have such a fun time. Like especially like with time as I started to figure out how the controls worked for the gliding. Because I'll be honest, it was a struggle at first, like learning how to pilot this thing. But once I started to figure it out, and like the different things and the different moves that you could do, and like the fact that this is going to be in PvE, like we're going to be having like some crazy dogfights in PvP and trying to juke missiles and shit. Like I could actually do this all day. I could spend all day just flying the ornithopter around. Range combat, on the other hand, I think is fairly well done as a third-person shooter. This looks and feels decent enough, in my opinion. The AI in this game, underwhelming. Enemies are just dumb as rocks. Like, they will look at you and shoot or run towards you in the case of melee, but that's about it. They don't do much else. Like, they'll strafe to get an angle while in the process of trying to line up their shots with you or run towards you with their weapon. Beyond the melee enemies, like occasionally taking cover for a few seconds before charging again, the AI doesn't appear to do much of anything. Are you gonna... What are you thinking? How you doing today? Okay. They're just really simple and uninteresting to fight from like a strategic perspective. And you know, as much as I am clamoring for more PvE content in the game, I don't know how complex or interesting these encounters will get based on the AI that we've seen in the game all throughout thus far. The Deep Desert, it's underwhelming, like in every respect. There are a shockingly low amount of points of interest in the Deep Desert. It was said to be like 10 times the size of Haga Basin. It probably has less than a 10th of points of interest and places to go. I don't know why or how that happened, really. The most concentrated percentage of things is actually right over the border in the A row. And as far as I can tell, these are all just reused locations from Haga Basin. There's like 10 to 12 of them in total. And then beyond that, everything else about the Deep Desert is literally 95% open sands, which you can't spend any time fighting on because the worms will show up. So it's like sand, which you can occasionally harvest for spice or flower sand, but it's mostly just empty space to fly over and nothing else. There's nothing interesting to do or see there. Most of the Deep Desert is just bland, empty, and boring flat out. Now, I know that this was designed around it, but compared to some of the interesting variety that they bring in the Haga Basin location, the Deep Desert feels really uninteresting as a play space. Also, I need to say this. I have absolutely zero clue where or how players are supposed to engage in that massive scale combined arms combat that they discussed and showcased prior to the game's release. You remember those clips from trailers where you've got these big groups of players on the ground shooting, meleeing, using their abilities, with tanks rolling over the hills, firing off shots, and then ornithopters flying through the sky? There is literally no location in the deep desert where such a scenario is possible. In the deep desert, the rock islands that exist are so few and far between, and those that do exist are incredibly small. I don't know where or how any of this ground combat at this massive scale was supposed to occur, because it's not occurring in the dunes, because the worm is going to be there in 15 seconds. So this stuff ain't happening anywhere in the deep desert. In fact, as we've seen, the deep desert has devolved into nothing but ornithopters. If you try fighting on the ground, you're going to get smashed by an ornithopter. While you're on the ground, you're not doing anything to the ornithopters. And if you're in an ornithopter, you can't see enemies in the sky more than like 50 meters away. It's not exactly, it feels like that though. It's ridiculous how short of a view distance is. By the time the pop-in happens, like you could think you're alone and then all of a sudden you'll see 30 ornithopters just appear 100 meters in front of you. Like it's ridiculous. So I don't know. There's just a lot of issues with the end game right now. I adore all of the game prior to the deep desert. I just want to say that. But the deep desert itself and the systems around it and the lack of content and how bland it is and how few points of interest there are and how the PvP has devolved into nothing but scout ornithopters with rockets, and how the fact that ground PvP pretty much is non-existent, and even if it was existent, it's got all of its own issues. Like, it's like two different games. You've got like the Haga Basin Dune Awakening, which I think is phenomenal as a survival crafting game shared world experience. And then you've got the Deep Desert, which just feels like a shitty version of the game with way less content. And there is PvP there, but it's not very interesting in my opinion. And I guess if nothing else, the Deep Desert has a lot of potential because it currently feels so lacking. That's how I would put it. Speaking of which, yeah, I want to talk about the ground PvP. It practically doesn't exist in this game, and that which does exist has issues. At the moment, PvP is like exclusively air combat focused. Any showcase or discussion of endgame ground combat simply doesn't exist in practicality in the Deep Desert. You're not seeing it happen. Like, if you wanted to get to the end game and get into PvP, you need to realize it is 99% scout ornithopters with rocket launchers. That is what you're working towards. But like I said, even if ground combat was a thing at endgame, it has many of its own issues, because the time to kill is absurd. It can take multiple minutes for someone to go down when two players are just a 1v1 duel. Snipers also basically don't work because players have shields for a majority of the fight, and there's no headshot damage against shields from the testing that I've seen. So you need other weapons to break the shields, or you need to bypass the shields with things like drill shots or slow melee attacks. And even if you do get a good fight in, with how the respawn system works, there's really no reward for killing. Killed players will respawn pretty much immediately nearby and could just keep coming back forever. It's basically a case of you keep doing this back and forth, fighting, dying, fighting, dying, fighting, killing, fighting, dying, and this happens onward and onward and onward until one of the two parties gets bored and decides to leave, which, with that in mind, at any point, anyone who wants can easily just run away from ground combats. With how the movement system works, for as much as I love it, it makes it so easy to disengage that people can just not engage in ground combat if they don't want to. There are some counters to that with melee and things like cripple to stop people from moving so easily, but anyways. Yeah, just in general, the end game right now makes no sense. It feels like two different games. Your first 50 to 100 hours, I adore. Haga Basin, it's like 95% of it is focused on PvE. I wish there was more PvP in the Haga Basin. I wish there was more PvP sans flight. If they could figure out how to make that happen so that people can't, like, you can probably rush an ornithopter in under 8 hours, would be my guess. You might be able to do it in under 5 hours if you got a group coordinated. So I would enjoy if the ground combat had some balance adjustments and it were more of a thing, because right now it's really just not a thing. And even if it is, it's got so many issues. Yeah, so I think they got a lot of work to do with the end game. They got a lot of work to do with the Deep Desert. If nothing else, I look forward to other additional maps besides Haga Basin and Deep Desert that aren't whatever it is that the Deep Desert is attempting to do, because I'm not vibing with it. And I think I'm not alone based on a lot of discussion that I've seen online amongst my friend group, just across the board. It seems like whatever it is they were trying to do with the Deep Desert, it's not come to fruition. And other than people who like flying around in their scout ornithopters, blowing other people out of the sky, it's not much reason to be there. It's not very fun. It's a very one-dimensional PvP. I just don't love it. Simple as that. And then lastly, in the cons, we got some lingering bugs, like you're still occasionally unable to shoot your guns, requiring a relog. We had some visual effects bugging out, like getting constant smoke from the Bene Gesserit abilities, which I actually think this looks cool as hell, but it is definitely a bug that's not supposed to be there. Enemies occasionally clipping through the terrain, not always bad, but can be on occasion. For some reason, when you go into shipwrecks, the music goes up like 10x decibels randomly, really strange. Oh no, this is the point, guys. This is where the music goes bananas. Remember? Oh, there it is. Oh my God, it just cranked it up 10x. What is the deal? All right, next up, I want to go over a few things that I would really love for them to add to the game. Areas that I think that they can make some big improvements. First up is world events. It's actually almost shocking to me that these aren't already a thing. Like, yes, we talked about the fact that you have the crashing ships and you got the sandstorms, but like, why are there no like what we would consider something like public events in MMOs? Beyond, I suppose, technically you could say those ships crashing out of the sky could be that. I'm talking about things with more of a PvE challenge incorporated into it. Like, what if they had like a Sardaukar invasion where they landed with their ships and they took over a whole area and you had to fight them back and fight some sort of a boss at the end, like just a bigger, tankier, one of those heavy LMG guys, which are already a nightmare, especially in the final tiers of this game. Some invasion or element like that. Or what about some massive spice area where everyone who walks in it starts hallucinating, and those hallucinations are actually things you can fight, these weird spectral creatures. Like, that would be really cool. I just wish there were more dynamic events with a PvE element and not just an environmental element like the sandstorms are, or like the worm eating you is. Like, you can't engage with that other than to run away from it or try to circumnavigate it or whatever. I would like more world events with a PvE challenge fighting incorporated in it. That would be really cool, and I hope that's something that they add in the future. Speaking of which, enemy variety, I just want to fight more than regular old humans with different weapons and different types of shields on them. Like, I counted a single side quest where we fought these things that were sort of like mutants, but that was it. Like, I can't believe they don't lean more into this. I think they absolutely should. As I just mentioned, you could go crazy with the spice hallucinations alone. You can have them be something that you actually engage in combat with. We already see these when, like, taking too much spice, you get all sorts of different hallucinations in the environment that could easily fit into the game and into a combat role. Something else that I would love if they were to add some ground combat focused PvP maps, like some place where you disable ornithopter flight. You can give some lore or region excuse, like the atmosphere can't be flown in or their anti-air turrets or whatever the heck. Just have it be entirely ground combat focused, where players are using their abilities and shooting their weapons. Maybe you can still have buggies and buggies with guns, but given how the PvP in the current iteration of the PvP zone has just focused itself into being ornithopter specific, I would like there to be maps or parts of the game that are PvP, not ornithopter specific. You don't even have to disable ornithopters. Create a space where ground combat can exist, where ornithopters don't rule the skies. Like something like the Rift, where people can take cover and they can fight within enclosed areas that ornithopters can't reach. I don't know, come up with something, right? And then of course, some more quality of life would be good. The game already does have a good amount of quality of life, but there's definitely more I'd like to see. Number one, top of the list, is better tool management. There's like 15 different tools in the game, and having to constantly swap those on and off your hotbar anytime you need them, replacing any weapons that you have slotted or any healing things you've got slotted, it's a pain in the butt. So some better tool management systems would be good. Either a separate hotkey with its own radial menu for your tools, or more multi-tools that you can craft later in the game. I don't know, but there's like 7-ish or 10. There's a lot of crafting and harvesting related tools, and you're constantly having to swap them on and off your hotbar, and it's not, I don't like it. So better tool management would be great. Also, batch salvaging for things like the plasteel fibers. You can salvage those. I have like 6,000 of them right now, and they can be salvaged into plant fiber, but you have to click it one at a time. So they already have batch crafting. If they could have batch salvaging, that would also be really nice. All right, so with all that said, as I mentioned at the top and in all the positives, I really like this game. So I'm happy to hear that it's actually doing very well. The player count has been growing over the week and a half since it was released. In fact, it just hit a new peak yesterday, reaching 189,000 concurrent players. That is awesome. It's also got a very positive rating on Steam with over 85% last time that I looked. And I think both of these are for good reason. I really like the game, and I'm happy for this success, as it means that updates and new content are for sure going to occur. In fact, we already know what's on the horizon for the next year. So sometime between October October and December, they're going to release the Lost Harvester. This is going to be a side story mission with some cosmetics rewarded through it. And then in January through March, we're supposed to be getting Raiders of the Broken Lands. It sounds like it's adding a Broken Lands region, but it's also tagged as cosmetics, so I'm not sure if this is just a cosmetic update. If so, that would be kind of lame. But then the first major content update that we know of is called the Water Wars, coming between April and June of next year. And this is when they're supposed to be adding the Polar Ice Cap DLC, which is gonna be an entirely new playable region. Now, I will say, between now and April, I hope that some of their updates are gonna add some new twist and variety to the game. I've really liked what I've played, but I think I'm at the point where I'm basically done with this playthrough. And it might sound quick because it's only been a week and a half or so since I first got access on the 5th. I also, like I said, I've played over 100 hours, and then prior to that, I played over 250 hours. So I've spent a lot of time with this current iteration of the game. While I've played it in a condensed time scale in terms of the number of days, 100 hours spread for someone who's maybe only playing 10 to 20 hours a week, that is many months of content. So it all varies depending on consumption rate, right? So, but I really like this game. Like I said, as a survival game, this baseline experience has been phenomenal. I've so enjoyed it, and sans the deep desert part of the game, everything else about it I loved. I spent a lot of time with it. I've had a lot of fun, and I'm very much so looking forward to the future of the game and whatever new content comes. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they, with the success that this game had seen with its sales, its player count, and its reviews, I hope they can really bang out this content and keep regular updates coming. I'm already looking forward to jumping back in. Like, I actually made a new character on a new server as well, like because I enjoyed going through the process of progressing in this game. I also want to check out a deep desert that is hopefully more populated than the one that I'm currently on. But regardless, yeah, it's got a lot of flaws, but I like this game. As a fan of survival games, as a fan of shared world games, as a fan of third-person shooters, this has been great. I've loved it. So that's all for today. Thank you. Hope you guys enjoyed our review of Dune Awakening. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.